feature comparison matrix. This is my pride and joy, and is a resource that I make to all my clients, and I'll make to you guys available as well. Then we're going to talk about the most stark differences between them. So I can't get into the details, the minutia of each one, but I'll tell you as an accountant, the stuff that matters to me in terms of what the differences are. And then lastly, I'll make a recommendation based on your situation, and we'll open it up for Q&A just in case you have very specific questions about picking these two. So let's start with the feature comparison matrix. I'm going to show you. So if you click on the link that's in the slides, okay, the link is a really long, weird Google Slides link. I mean, Google, like a spreadsheet link, Google Sheets link. If you click on that link, you will get to this page where I have QuickBooks Online Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, Advanced, Enterprise Platinum, Diamond, Desktop Pro Plus, and Desktop Premier Plus, all compared here, so you can compare the different features across from it. It has about 222 lines where I went in basically feature by feature and highlighted the ones that are at least significantly different. Okay, so you'll be able to print this or look at it, have it as a cheat sheet. I update this every month as a new feature comes out. This has been fully updated for QuickBooks Desktop 2021. Okay, so you should be able to use this as a reference. This has been out there for a couple of years. I update it all the time. If you want to if your client's telling you, hey, I'm thinking about getting into QuickBooks, but these are the three things I must have, right? That you want to make sure that you go through this list and see that they are there. So it's a really, really important. To me, it's been a really important labor of love type tool that I've been working on. Okay, all right. So that's the feature comparison matrix. Now let's talk about price. Okay, so I'm going to start with QuickBooks Online pricing, and there's going to be a retail pricing and wholesale pricing. So wholesale pricing is when you, the accountant, pay for the QuickBooks Online file, and you recover your costs through your services. Maybe you include it in your monthly bookkeeping services. Maybe you resell it to your client. That would be up to you. But wholesale pricing is the price available for accounting professionals. Now, QuickBooks Online Simple Start is the only edition of the four that doesn't have a wholesale pricing attached to it. So if you're going to have a customer with wholesale pricing, you'll probably most likely have to start with QuickBooks Online Essentials. So QuickBooks Online Simple Start is $15. Simple Start is $25. Essentials is $40, Plus is $70, and Advanced is $150. This is per month, per company. The price you see in red is the wholesale price. Essentials and Plus and a self-employed have a 50% discount, and Advanced has a 30% discount. We'll get into the details of that, but it's really important that if you are going to get your client into QuickBooks Online or your clients into QuickBooks Online, you must understand the costs involved. If your clients are paying for QuickBooks Online, you don't care about this, right? The clients are paying for it. You're just accessing and doing your part as the accountant. But if you're paying for it, you need to build this into your cost structure. Now, I want to make a quick mention about QuickBooks Online Self-Employed. I personally, Hector Garcia, I hate QuickBooks Online Self-Employed. This has been going on for about 4 years. I've never liked the platform when it first came out. I don't like it today. I have a couple of clients on it because they choose to get on it, but I would never proactively put my clients on QuickBooks Online Self-Employed. Number one reason is because I'm a respectable accountant and I respect the balance sheet. QuickBooks Online Self-Employed doesn't have a balance sheet. So by definition, QuickBooks Self-Employed is not an accounting software or a bookkeeping software. Now, it bears the same name as QuickBooks, but unfortunately, in my opinion, it shouldn't. So not having a balance sheet is a problem for me. Second one, it is not used for tracking accounts payable. So you cannot track bills or accounts payable. It's not designed for multiple users. The reporting is very limited, mostly limited to like a Schedule C type filer. If you are in tax, you understand what that means, but just like a simple P&L. And there are no journal entries. So as an accountant, I can't make any adjustment. I would have to fudge with the numbers and enter stuff in there to do that, right? So that, to me, that makes it basically not a program that I wouldn't include or recommend, but I'm including it in the list because it is part of the QuickBooks ecosystem, and it's important that you are aware of it. Now, one of my pet peeves of QuickBooks Online Self-Employed, which is actually the best feature from a user perspective, is your ability to mix business and personal. As an accountant, I want to instruct and avoid doing that for my clients. Most clients that are self-employed do mix them, so they love to have one place where they can see their entire financial picture, including their personal stuff and their business stuff. So I would say that's the best way to describe what QuickBooks Online Self-Employed is. Now, QuickBooks Online, as I mentioned, you can do invoicing and you can do banking. Once you move on to Simple Start, you're going to get access to a balance sheet. You're going to be able to add payroll, and you're going to have reports, like real accounting reports. Simple Start is limited to one user. QuickBooks Online Essentials, the next level up, which is $40 a month, adds accounts payable or tracking bills. It also adds timekeeping, so you can have timesheets. That would allow 3 users, so you can have 3 users accessing QuickBooks Online Essentials on top of the accountant user. Then Plus, which is the one that most of my clients are in, it's going to add classes, locations, which adds more dimensions to reporting, adds job costing or projects, adds inventory management. I'll put an asterisk on inventory management because it's a little bit weak, and adds the ability to track budgets. QuickBooks Online Plus gives you 5 users plus the accountant. And then we have QuickBooks Online Advanced, which will give you unlimited classes and locations, which are limited to 40 combined in Plus, and unlimited chart of accounts, which are limited to 250 in other editions. It gives you custom fields. It does give you some limited CSV file batch data entry, which is kind of okay. And it gives you additional reports. One thing I want to mention is this is not a natural progression. You should never get somebody started in QuickBooks Online Self-Employed, because Self-Employed cannot convert over to Simple Start, Essentials, or Plus. It cannot migrate. So it's a big issue for me if somebody says, okay, I'll just start with Self-Employed and then be able to go to QBO afterwards. This is a big issue for me, a big problem for me. QuickBooks was supposed to solve this long time ago. As of the date we're recording this, in October of 2020, that has not been solved. So it's kind of a big pet peeve of mine, in my opinion, not being able to do that. Okay, so it's not possible to upgrade at the moment, which makes you're stuck with it. And if you want to migrate to Simple Start or Plus or whatever, you're gonna have to start over. You could export the self-employed data into Excel, but it's all mixed with personal and business anyway, so you probably don't want to bring that in. So unfortunately, in my opinion, I would just skip it altogether, unless we're talking about like an Uber driver that's never going to set up a corporation or something like that. That would make sense. Now let's talk about pricing on the QuickBooks desktop world. And this is probably the biggest, most starkest difference between QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop, which is, let's make the assumption, let me go back here for a second. We'll make the assumption that you have 10 customers. You're working with 10 customers, and they're all going to be working on QuickBooks Online Essentials. Well, you're going to be paying $20 a month per customer, which is going to be $200 a month. So out of pocket, it will cost you $2,400 to work with QuickBooks Online clients. And this is in Essentials, which is the very limited version compared to Plus and Advanced. So that's an investment of $2,400 to manage those 10 customers. If we move to QuickBooks Desktop, now let me fast forward to QuickBooks Desktop. There are available, you can still purchase one-time cost programs. So you can buy QuickBooks Desktop Pro for $399 one-time cost, or you can buy QuickBooks Premier or Accountant. In 2021, those two things have the same price. So I completely ignore the existence of Premier, and I just include Accountant in my basically repertoire of things that we can offer. And that's going to be $650 one-time fee, right? Now, QuickBooks Desktop, the one-time cost is supported for 3 years. So you're gonna basically have fully functional software from the day you buy it until May 31st of the 3rd year following the release. So QuickBooks Desktop 2021, Pro, Premier, or Accountant, whatever it is supported through May 31st, 2024. So when you look at the price of QuickBooks Desktop, I would make the assumption or make the calculation in your head that this is a one-time cost for 3 years, and you will probably have to make the same one-time cost 3 years from now, assuming they still offer one-time cost software. But it looks like they're trying to move away from that. Every software company is trying to get away from that and move to subscription services. Now, QuickBooks Desktop Pro last year, 2020 and older, used to be as low as like $200. Okay, in 2021 they basically doubled the price. Okay, they realized how cheap QuickBooks Pro has been for many years, and they got smart from that perspective. I'm a stockholder and into it, so I actually agree with that. They increased the price of QuickBooks Desktop Pro because $200 was way too cheap, especially when comparing it to the QuickBooks Online solution. Now this year, Intuit is supporting the Plus edition of Desktop. So they made it a bit confusing by adding the Plus in there, which is going to be an annual subscription, which we'll talk about in a second. Now, if you buy the one-time software, which will last you 3 years, once it stops being supported, basically it means that any connected service, payroll, merchant services, online banking like downloading transactions from the bank, emailing forms, anything that's connected to the web will stop functioning. So you could potentially have a QuickBooks Desktop 2007 still installed on your computer. As long as you're not using any connected service, it will still work. You can still use it with no problem. I have a couple clients that have like 2011 or 2012 and they use it, they just don't use any connected service. Now, the solution to this 3-year unsupported issue for QuickBooks is they're now offering an annual subscription to the QuickBooks Desktop software. This is not on the cloud. This is annual subscription to desktop-based software. The functionality is the same. It's installed on your computer. All the restrictions of having to have the QuickBooks physically installed on your computer are the same, but instead they charge per year. So QuickBooks Desktop Pro Plus starts at $299 per year for a 1 user, all the way to $699 per year for a 3 user. Now they do offer a first year discount. I believe it's $100 off, but then it defaults back to the price you're seeing on the screen. For QuickBooks Premier Plus, for the annual subscription of QuickBooks Premier, it starts at $499 per year and all the way to $1699 per year for a 5 user. And if you go with QuickBooks Accountant Edition, which is just like Premier, the pricing for the annual subscription is $449 per year for a 1 user. So yes, QuickBooks Accountant Desktop, which is better than Plus, is priced below Premier, which at this point I would tell you QuickBooks Premier is not even a version of QuickBooks that I would even recommend, because it basically makes no sense to recommend it. I don't work for them. If I did, I would have fixed the pricing to make this thing make sense, but they're the knuckleheads that decided to do this. Now, if you wanted to get 5 user licenses of QuickBooks Desktop Accountant, you're going to be paying $449 per year per license. At that point, it might make more sense to look at Premier Plus or purchase a permanent license of QuickBooks Accountant instead of the annual Plus subscription. I know this thing is like crazy the way it works, and at this point I've memorized it, but I know it's a lot of information, and hopefully you'll be able to download those slides, save them, watch the recording if you need to go back to this. And of course, next year this will all be dated because the pricing will likely change again. QuickBooks Enterprise Accountant Plus, which is the annual subscription to QuickBooks Enterprise for accountants, is $799 per year for a 1 user. Now, it's worth mentioning that when you purchase QuickBooks Enterprise Accountant Plus, the annual subscription for $799, it actually includes both Enterprise Accountant and the regular Desktop Accountant. Plus, it includes a license of QuickBooks for Mac, which I won't even talk about QuickBooks for Mac, because that's an entirely different rabbit hole that I would like to avoid altogether. 100% I want to avoid altogether. And then we have the regular QuickBooks Enterprise for end users, right? So this is not for accountants, for end users, which you can buy anywhere between 1 to 30 user license on the Enterprise Silver. That's going to be between $1,200 and $7,600 per year. And then on the Platinum Enterprise, which is 1 to 30 users, will be anywhere between $1,900 and $8,300 per year. And there's another edition called Gold and Diamond. For now, I'm just going to leave those out because that's completely insane to get deeply into that. So the Pro Advisor Desktop program for accountants that want to get QuickBooks Accountant or QuickBooks Enterprise Accountant, the $449 per year at $799, you cannot buy them. Like, you can't press a button and say, I want to buy this. You have to purchase the Pro Advisor program, and they come included with the Pro Advisor program. All right. So let's talk about desktop annual subscription. What is QuickBooks doing different when people are deciding to go with the annual subscription? So one of the things that they're doing is they're including Intuit Data Protect. This is a cloud backup service. It will back up your computer. It's like something you would normally pay $10 to $20 a month for through Carbonite or some other application that would download, that will upload your data into the cloud to be able to restore it if something gets deleted. They also include technical support, and I'm doing air quotes for technical support because I've never personally found QuickBooks technical support useful to anyone ever in my 12 years I've been working with Intuit. I have called Intuit for technical support, and in some rare cases, they have fixed something that's more like on the QuickBooks side, on their like admin side, that's something on my desktop side. Unfortunately, they just don't have as good as technical QuickBooks people that can help users through accounting problems as like the Pro Advisor community and the accountant community. And I know many of you are attending this webinar live. Now, they do answer how do I questions, but at any point in time that there's an accounting component to it, they cannot answer it because none of the technical support people are accountants and they wouldn't understand the context of accounting on any QuickBooks question. So that's kind of like the issue with offering free technical support. There's a lot of caveats when it comes to it. But the biggest and probably the only really valuable piece about paying for QuickBooks Plus or the desktop annual subscription is that every single year when the new version comes out, you get access to it. Okay? You get access to it, right? One thing that they've done very different this year, this took everybody by surprise, is in 2021 editions, they added an extra feature called receipt management, which is pretty cool. I'm not going to get into it. I have a video in YouTube that kind of goes over it. So I invite you to go to my YouTube channel if you want to see how that works. This feature is only available in the annual subscription. So Pro Plus, Premier Plus, and Enterprise only. So if you buy QuickBooks Desktop Pro outright, or QuickBooks Accountant outright, or QuickBooks Premier outright with a one-time, you will not have access to the receipt management feature. So they successfully dangled a carrot for users to say, okay, this additional feature might be worth me paying annually instead of one-time fee for 3 years worth of support. Interesting to see how it works out. We'll see if it comes really successful in the market. All right, thank you for that. I'm going to run a quick polling question. This is polling question number 2. While I run the polling question, I want to answer a question from the chat. One is, if a customer is working with QuickBooks Enterprise, can I downgrade that to QuickBooks Desktop Accountant or Pro or Premier? Phyllis, the answer is yes and no. So yes, you can hire a service, is usually between $300 and $500, third-party service outside of the QuickBooks ecosystem. You can hire a service that will do the downgrade for you. And the no is there's no button inside QuickBooks so you can say, hey, downgrade my enterprise to Pro, Premier, or Accountant. Okay, so that's the answer to that. Unfortunately, once you get to enterprise, it's very hard to like sort of go backwards. Okay, that's just the way it is. It's a reality that we've been living in for a very long time. Okay. Somebody saying, do you think that Intuit will eventually completely do away with desktop one-time fee and it will move everybody into annual subscriptions? Now, I can't predict the future, but I can tell you the writing is pretty much in the wall. I think that yes, at some point, QuickBooks Desktop or all QuickBooks offerings or anything that Intuit offers you will have an annual or monthly subscription to it, because that's the way of all software industries. All software industries want to move to annual, monthly recurring revenue. And can you blame them? You know, we have 500-600 people watching this webinar live. Most of them are accountants. And I can tell you 9 out of 10 prefer a client that pays a monthly annual fee than a client that pays once and you never see them again. That's just the nature of good business, right? You want to have recurring clients, and then the onus is on Intuit to deliver value every single year, every single month, to make it worth it for us to continue to pay that monthly or annual fee. All right, so let's talk about access, and this is probably the other really stark difference. So we talked about pricing and the differences between that. Let's talk about access. So QuickBooks Online, the way you access it is if you are an accountant and you are invited to collaborate with your client file, a file that your client pays for, there's zero cost to you as an accountant to support that client. You don't need to install anything in your computer. You just log into the website and you're working live with your client. QuickBooks Self-Employed allows you to invite one accountant. QuickBooks Online Simple Start, Essentials, and Plus allows you to invite 2 accountants. And QuickBooks Online Advanced allows you to invite 3 accountants. So the question is, why the hell would I invite 3 accountants into my QuickBooks Online file? Well, maybe you got the accountant that does the bookkeeping, maybe you have the accountant that does the tax, and maybe you have the accountant that does some sort of audit. That's kind of that's the logic that they used on that, right? Okay. And the last one is, look, if you're using Google Chrome browser, and I have a video on YouTube that explains this process in detail, and you use multiple Chrome users, you can essentially open unlimited amount of QuickBooks Online company files at the same time. So if you're comparing, for example, I'm comparing intercompany transactions for a client that has 3 businesses, and I got money moving across, all 3 companies in this weird, bizarre triangle. I need to have all 3 of those balance sheets open and the details so I can try to triangulate and reconcile those intercompany transactions. So with QuickBooks Online, using Google Chrome and multiple users, you can actually open unlimited with Google Chrome, unlimited companies at the same time, and compare all those things at the same time, something you can't do with desktop. Now, if you sign up for the free QuickBooks Online Accountant Edition, which doesn't cost anything, you can have access to all your QuickBooks Online files in one place. You can add new clients with wholesale billing. We discussed pricing earlier. There's an additional set of tools only for accountants. One's called Reclassify, which is really neat. There's a video on YouTube that explains how to do it. Month-end review. You can write off invoices in batch. You can undo reconciliation. Something interesting and peculiar about QuickBooks Online is that only the accountant can undo reconciliations. End users, or mortals, how we call them here in our practice, the mortals cannot undo their own reconciliations. They need an accountant to be able to undo a reconciliation. So I find that to be particularly interesting. And there's also a tool called the trial balance tool, which is now called the prep for taxes tool, which is basically sort of a trial balance worksheet that allows you to make notes to the trial balance. It's pretty neat, pretty good. Once you try it, you'll see it's a pretty interesting workflow. You can also add unlimited team members for free. It doesn't cost you anything. You can have 20 people working under you as the main accountant and collaborating in that client's account. And you can do basic workflow. So you can add customers and deadlines and dates. It's actually not a great workflow management app, but it's free and it's built into QuickBooks Online Accountant. And there's also a built-in document manager. So you can upload your client's tax returns, bank statements, whatever. And you can have one place where all your client documents sit in one place. It's all for free, doesn't cost accountants anything. So obviously, QuickBooks Online is trying to throw as much value as possible to accountants, because they want to convince accountants that it's better to pay monthly for QuickBooks Online versus paying a one-time cost or one every 3-year cost for QuickBooks Desktop for unlimited clients. Okay, so let's talk about QuickBooks Desktop access. So with QuickBooks Desktop, you need to have a multi-user license to be able to have 2 or more people connected in one QuickBooks Online concurrently. As we mentioned earlier on the pricing, QuickBooks Desktop Pro has a cap of 3 users, QuickBooks Premier and Accountant has a cap of 5 users, and QuickBooks Enterprise has a cap of 30 users. There's a 40 user edition, which is QuickBooks Diamond. I personally have never tested it. I'm not ready to endorse the 40 user version. I actually can hardly endorse a 30 user version, but that's a topic for a different webinar. The company file needs to be in a computer or in a server within a local area network where all the other users are connected to work in a multi-user type mode. You must switch to multi-user mode, which has certain restrictions on the company file if you want to have more than one person connected at a time. There are some admin functions that require you to switch to single user, which creates a little bit of a disruption in the workflow, which is one of the things I don't like too much about QuickBooks Desktop. And if you're using QuickBooks Pro or QuickBooks Premier, sorry, if you're using QuickBooks Pro or QuickBooks Premier, you can only have one company file open at a time. So you must close the company to open another one. If you're working with Accountant Edition or Enterprise Edition, you can work with 2 companies at the same time. Ooh, 2. There's no way to have 3 companies at the same time. It's just not physically possible with the desktop platform. Okay, it would use way too much resources in the computer. And lastly, if you have hosting, if you add hosting services to that, which is our sponsor for this webinar, go to ERP. That's what they do. You can actually have multiple people working remotely without these restrictions of the physical computer or server being in the same location. Let's call it that. Okay. If you're using QuickBooks Desktop hosting, the cost is, in addition to your software costs, will be anywhere between $40 and $60 per user. There's the variation could be there if you request your hosting company to add additional apps or support to additional apps, adding Microsoft Office. All these things will add to the cost per month. But usually $40 to $45 is kind of the starting price for just core QuickBooks Desktop hosting. Usually you're going to use something called Microsoft Remote Desktop Services to log in, or in the case of go to my ERP, it's called Remote App Services. You really don't need to know the name of that, but the difference is in the interaction, the way it feels. Towards the end, I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, and like I said, as long as the software and the data is in this hosting service, it would be like it's in the cloud. Okay, now you can temporarily transfer data between the host and your computer, like if you need to move an Excel file back and forth, if you need to move a PDF file back and forth, that could be done when you're working with hosting. But specifically, the QuickBooks Desktop file should always remain at the host. Now, the most popular hosting platforms out there is Right Networks. Okay, they're a big partner of Intuit. When anybody buys QuickBooks Enterprise, Intuit sells them Right Networks. They don't sell them anything else. So you're gonna see the most common hosting service you're gonna see is Right Networks. Go to My ERP is technically a competitor of Right Networks. They do work a little bit different, so I suggest that you look at them as an alternative to Right Networks, which is kind of like the biggest name in the area. Now, what if you don't want to get hosting? You don't want to pay for additional hosting, but you still want to be able to access QuickBooks remotely. So you can log in into the workstation using TeamViewer or go to my PC, right? That requires an R. Sorry about that. TeamViewer. Go to my PC, Splashtop. These programs are typically not that expensive, maybe $50 to $60 a month at most. It does take over the computer, so the other user on the other side cannot get any work done. So you will be taking over that resource for sure. You can collaborate. So TeamViewer and GoToMyPC are great tools for training. Like if you want to train someone how to do something, it's a great tool for that because you can walk them through while you're doing it. But it's not ideal for like working every day on it because you're gonna basically take away access to the other user on the other side. So, for example, let's say you're an accountant and you have a client that's using QuickBooks Desktop in a remote, in a local area network. You don't want to go with hosting. They don't have money to have their own server to do self-hosting. You can buy a $400 computer, plug it into their network, and then you can remote into that computer. Technically, that's a possibility, right? So that is a way you can do it. I've done that before. That could work, but not as smooth as working with hosting, because you have to make sure that computer's on. And if it's not on, you have to call the office and say, hey, can you reset this computer? With the pandemic and people working from home, you want something that's going to be reliable, that's not going to require somebody to physically be there to push buttons for you to be able to access the computer. Now, even if you're working with hosting or remote desktop, whatever, there's going to be multi-user license issues, multi-user mode issues. All that stuff still applies whether you're hosting or working remotely. And there's also an alternative to either write networks or go to my ERP or remote desktop tools, is a tool called QuickBooks. So what QuickBooks does is called remote, I call it turn-based file sharing. So your QuickBooks Desktop file, it's on a computer. You install QuickBooks on both sides. One person says, I'm going to work on it. It blocks the other user, and then you work on it. Once you finish, you close it. It becomes available. The next person that logs in can use it. This is an alternative to Dropbox. People were trying to use Dropbox to use QuickBooks Desktop, and it kept destroying files, right? So Dropbox, never use Dropbox, never use OneDrive, never use any of those file sharing programs for QuickBooks Desktop. It will destroy your file. It'll create conflicted copies. I actually like QBooks. I think QBooks works really well. And the sponsor of this webinar, Go to My ERP, was very gracious about, hey, talk about all the options out there, right? So be honest and transparent with people with all the things that are out there. They are all different. There isn't one that's better than the other. They have different circumstances in which you need one or the other. So in a multi-user environment, QBooks doesn't work. Both of you need to have a license of QuickBooks because you're transferring the file back and forth. So if you're working in a multi-user environment, this is where hosting or remoting into a blank PC would work a little bit better. QBO features that are not in desktop. So I'm going to put my hat where I'm going to sell you QuickBooks Online and convince you that QuickBooks Online is better than desktop. Okay. Cloud access 24/7. I don't have to fumble with hosting or remote access, anything like that. It's also always in multi-user mode, and no one will ever be interrupted for logging into QuickBooks Online. I would say that's number one feature. Number two, automated bank feeds and highly customizable bank rules. One thing that QuickBooks Desktop has not been able to get close to feature-wise is QuickBooks Online bank feeds. If you have never used QuickBooks Online bank feeds, you will be mind blown, right? Once you learn how to use it, you'll be mind blown how great this feature is. Like, this stuff is like really, really next level, great feature. QuickBooks Online bank feeds is amazing, right? It really is the best out there, best in the market, compared with any other accounting software. QuickBooks Online bank feed, once you learn how to use it, it's a super efficient way to enter data. QuickBooks Desktop is, I would say, 70% of the way there, especially with version 2021. Automated report emailing, right? So you can automate reports for QuickBooks Online to automatically send it to you, to your client, to whomever, and it happens without you even thinking or looking at it, even while QuickBooks is closed. It's amazing. It's a great feature. It's one of the things that makes QuickBooks Online distinctively better. QuickBooks Online can automate credit card charges, right? If you have QuickBooks payments, if you have merchant services, by doing what's called a recurring sales receipt. So if you're using QuickBooks Online yourself and your clients pay you a fixed monthly fee of $200 a month or whatever, you can create one recurring sales receipt, enter the credit card information, and automatically, like magic, you will have your money come in every month, every week, whatever it happens to be. Okay. So I would say those are like the high level QuickBooks Online features that are better in QuickBooks Desktop. I would add a new feature. I'm going to add it in here just because it's like really transcendent. It's technically not an official feature yet, which is called tags. It's actually something in the labs, but tags is going to be the most significant difference between QuickBooks Online and Desktop. after bank feeds. Once you start using tags, you will be amazed on how you did accounting without tags before, because you can tag transactions beyond their category, beyond their expense category or whatever. You can tag transactions and create all sorts of awesome reports. I got a video on YouTube as well on that, so I recommend that you watch that video. Okay, so now I'm gonna put my hat where I'm gonna convince you that QuickBooks Desktop is better than QuickBooks Online, right? So I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here and try to convince you that Desktop is better. So number one, the ability to do historical backups. I would say that's my number one pet peeve, not being able to do historical backups in QuickBooks Online. I hate that because I like to create a historical backup and play with it. I like to make a historical backup so I can train my client in a duplicate. I like to create a historical backup before I connect an app without knowing what kind of destruction the app is going to do to my file. I like to create a historical backup so I can send it to the auditor who's auditing only 1 year of QuickBooks for me, and I don't want to send them access to the entire thing, right? So historical backups to me are a huge deal. QuickBooks Online doesn't have that. QuickBooks Desktop has the edge there. Reports. In QuickBooks Online, reports, they've gotten better, but bottom line, QuickBooks Desktop reports are a million times better. I got a video on YouTube, like an hour video, where I explain custom reports in Desktop, and you will be convinced that a lot of these reports are just not achievable in QuickBooks Online. Works without internet access. Nowadays, who doesn't have internet access? But either way, if you don't have internet access, I would love to be able to still get work done. So not having work done because there's no internet or whatever, that to me is kind of a big deal. No limit on the number of companies that can be managed with a single license. That, to accountants, I would say economically, it's a really big deal. There's a feature called Add Edit Multiple List Entries. To me, it's basically one of the best things that we have, especially with inventory type clients where I have to import and update pricing for a whole bunch of items. This tool is actually pretty incredible. Payroll job costing, QuickBooks Online has some version of it. It's just not there yet. So if you're a construction business or whatever, it's just much better. In QuickBooks Premier Accountant and Enterprise, you get sales orders, you get multiple units of measure, you get inventory assemblies. For an inventory-based company, it's a no-brainer. QuickBooks Desktop, it's better. For QuickBooks Accountant and Enterprise, you get batch enter transactions, which to me is, again, one of the best tools for accountants, for anybody, that you can have. You don't get that in QuickBooks Online. You get some version of it, but it's just not there. And in QuickBooks Enterprise Platinum, you can have multiple warehouse locations, barcode scanning, lot serial numbers, robust user permissions. Again, for the larger companies with inventory, it should be a no-brainer. One thing I wanted to add, I'm going to add a double pound here on ability to do historical backups, because if you pay for an extra app called Rewind, you can add the ability to do historical backups to QuickBooks Online, right? But you have to pay extra for that, for Rewind. And if you're using QuickBooks Online Advanced, there's a built-in historical backup tool that actually works pretty well. But again, that's $150 a month for QuickBooks Online Advanced. It's very difficult to have an apples-to-apples comparison where it's such a huge price difference in itself. But I think it's important to mention that it is possible to do backups by paying extra with QuickBooks Online. It's not built into the software. Now, when do accountants prefer online over desktop? Having one login to access all the companies at the same time, not having to remember the password or keep a password file for every QuickBooks Desktop file, instant collaboration, not moving files back and forth, not dealing with accountant's copy and backups and portables and all that stuff, and not interrupting another user while working remotely or doing a wire transfer. Those are big deals. Again, being able to open multiple companies at the same time, not needing to worry about security backups, which is different than historical backups. We're talking about security backups. As I mentioned, bank feeds is my number one favorite feature, and probably for all accountants in QuickBooks Online when comparing to desktop. And most modern accountants want to have a cloud practice. I understand that 100%, so that's true. Also, there's over 5 million QuickBooks Online users. So that means more potential customers to serve and help troubleshoot their accounting. So as an accountant, I love where my customers are, right? Because that's where my money's gonna be. And generally, and there might be other asterisks here. Generally, because QuickBooks Online is easier to use, because it has less buttons, because it has less features, typically client messes are not so bad and they're easier to clean up. But the tools to clean up in desktop are better. So it's kind of it's a strange one to give to online, but I'm just trying to be as transparent as possible. Now, when do accountants prefer desktop? Number one, not having to pay for multiple companies. I would say that would probably be the number one thing. Being able to create historical, multiple copies, historical backups. Reports in QuickBooks Desktop is better. Again, I'm repeating these things. I'm reinforcing these things. Feature like payroll, job costing, inventory management, batch, enter, add, edit. This is an important one. Manual data entry speed. Because there's no lag on QuickBooks Desktop, or virtually no lag, because you don't have to wait until a file, something is saved and it goes to the internet and comes back. When you're doing manual data entry, not bank feeds, when you're doing manual data entry, it feels much faster to work in QuickBooks Desktop versus online. I've proven that. I've done tests in my office where I enter 100 transactions manually and online versus desktop, and desktop is faster, period. However, with bank feeds, that gets flipped. And just adding hosting services will still give you the cloud-based practice that you want. The forms and the workflows in QuickBooks Desktop are a little bit more customizable, especially the forms like invoices, estimates. And there's still 2 million users of QuickBooks Desktop, right? It's less than online. And I make more money as a consultant, as a trainer, as somebody helping someone run their own business, typically with desktop, because there's more custom workflow, more custom reports, and typically customers will pay more consulting fees for me to help them use QuickBooks Desktop versus online, because there isn't that many buttons to press in QuickBooks Online. Okay, so that would be my comparison for the two. I have a couple slides there where I have scenarios where I would recommend one version or the other. So I welcome for you to check those out. And when do I recommend Pro or Premier? Never. Okay, especially this year. My focus is getting people in QuickBooks Online or in Enterprise. Okay, I don't want to work with QuickBooks Pro Premier customers anymore for multiple reasons. One, I know what Enterprise can do. I often forget what Pro Premier can't do that Enterprise can. So I feel just very discouraged when, oh crap, I forgot that Enterprise does that, but Pro Premier doesn't. If I'm gonna recommend like a Pro Premier level type of software, one-time fee type of software, I recommend Desktop Accountant, which I think is the best bang for the buck today. Out of all the editions of QuickBooks, best bang for the buck, dollar for dollar, QuickBooks Desktop Accountant is the best thing that you can buy. Yeah, I think it's the best. So if you're gonna stick with a QuickBooks Desktop Accountant, a desktop platform that's not enterprise, I would recommend Desktop Accountant.